All right, we're live.
Mine still says off air. Here we go. All right, we're live now. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to our first attempt at a panel. And today we've got Becky Grabsky, Danyavada Warren Green, and Gary Falk, and myself, Shinamalia Simons. And we're coming from all over the world, from Queensland and Australia. It's 11 p.m. In Auckland, it's 2 a.m. for Danyavada, and Becky's in North Carolina. I think about 8 a.m. and Gary's 8 a.m. as well in New York. I wanted to start, Gary, by asking you about non-duality. And when you look at Wikipedia, it seems that every religion now has a non-dual aspect. Can you give us a little bit of a definition as to your understanding of what non-duality means?
Yeah, thanks. I'll try to be succinct, but let me just say non-duality is kind of like a big hot thing now. And I've been really following and studying and practicing, or whatever you want to call it, since 1982 with the when I read Nisargadatta's classic, I Am That. Real succinctly, I think the best way to explain it is to take the Sanskrit word Advaita, because this is all about Advaita. Now, in Sanskrit, Dvaita or whatever means two, divide, Dvaita. The A negates that, so it's Advaita, not two. So whatever we see going on, whatever's happening, is not two. We think it's two because there's subject and object, and that dichotomy. But in reality, according to Advaita, the truth is, the underlying truth is it's not two. You can't say it's one because obviously there's a whole lot of multiplicity happening, but it's not divided. And so it's kind of like very much a mystical thing where you see the oneness, you see the unity. Who was talking about that recently on one of our ex-disciple interviews, where they had the experience of just, it was Ethna, right? She had this experience of oneness. Well, that's a classic mystical experience. So that's what it's all about. And but the whole thing is, if it stays on the level of philosophy and conceptuality, it means nothing. It has to be experiential. So that's my shtick regarding non-duality. Thanks.
Did anybody want to say anything about non-duality, Becky? Do you want to say something about that?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Okay. For me, this all surprisingly just boils down to love and to that connection that we all have with each other. So as a professional psychic for years, I have really been just connecting through the ethers with my clients and with everybody else that I get in touch with. And so the way I feel it or see it or know it personally is that there's just one kind of energy that exists, and it expresses itself in all these different forms, in all these different ways, all these different people and animals and plants and planets and stars and other things. But there is just that oneness, I don't know what else to call it, that really ties everything together. It just doesn't, if we think about it as separate things, then so if I look at you and I think of you as something separate, then it's hard for me to relate to you. It's hard for me to see you. It's hard for me to know you. But if I connect with you and I see, and I feel the oneness with you, then it opens the door to understanding, to knowing, to relating, to feeling. For me, you're an extension of who I am. And so is Danyavada, and so is Gary. We're all really extensions of each other, and that's how we connect. I don't know if that's really a talk on non-duality, but that's sort of my take on you know, the way it works for me, and I think it's in alignment with non-duality, but I think I use different words.
That's great. No, that's great. Danyavada, do you want to say something?
Only basically to agree and reaffirm what Gary and Becky have both said, that from my understanding, it's about consciousness and recognizing that consciousness is undivided and all-pervasive, and that we are that consciousness. We have the ability to be aware of it, not in an intellectual way, but in a true pure awareness sense, that it's a sense that we have. It's not a thought process, it's not a concept, it's a pure sense of being consciousness and recognizing that that consciousness is expressing itself through form, and that form takes on personality, and that's where you get this sense of I amness. And that I amness can take two forms. It can take the form of I am the body, I am this personality, I am this identity, which is where we get led into division and separativity. But then if you start looking for the source of that, you recognize I am consciousness, that the thought and the identity and the personality evolves out of pure consciousness. And if you can get to that, then you can start to recognize that we're all one. We're all an expression, a different expression, a unique expression of the one undivided being. So that's kind of my sense of it. And it
okay. I'd like to add, if I could, I think there is a bit of a timeline here that's happening, in that for me, I think there's a kind of new common sense that's arising, and it's all kind of culminating in this non-duality. And I wonder, you know, like historically, when you think about what happened with spirituality, there was always well, what I would call religious corporations that kind of tweaked their scriptures so that there had to be an intermediary between us and God. There had to be a priest or a mufti or a spiritual master who would do the translation for us with our conversing with God, and come back and tell us exactly what God was saying to us, you know. And to me, the way that things have evolved is now we're at a time where people are saying, you know what, I don't need the intermediary anymore. I don't need the priest. I don't need the mufti. I can have this conversation myself. And I think the next thing that's happening with non-duality is we're actually saying, I am that, who I'm conversing with. I am God, you know, and so there's no longer any separation at all. And to me, that's a kind of common sense that's coming up. And I wonder whether it might be the death of religious corporations. I wonder whether it might be the death of the centre, for instance. I wonder whether it's the death of, you know, religion as we knew it.
Well, can I jump in here? You know, from my point of view, from my point of view, look, really, I hope it's the death of these religious corporations and these religious organizations, and really, you hit on the key aspect of non-duality, which is no intermediaries. You know, the whole thing of, oh, I don't have it within me. I have to, you know, touch the lotus feet of the master, and maybe then he'll deign to, you know. None of that stuff. There's no intermediaries. I am that. You are that. There is only that, and we are that, and this just, you know, but we have to realize it within our own experience. But the whole notion of like popes and priests and gurus and whatever intermediaries of any kind, you know, out the door, you know, and it's about sharing, And that's not to say we can't learn from other people. I mean, I have teachers. I have lots of teachers. I don't mind sitting at someone's feet, but they're not my guru. But I'm learning they have more experience, or they're more steeped in the non-dual experience of consciousness. So it's about peer-to-peer. Even in the teaching student mode, it's still peer-to-peer. There's no one who's better or worse than anybody else. It's sharing. And so that's the key. No intermediaries. That whole thing is over and done. We've been there. We've done that. So anyway, great. Thanks for bringing that up. I think that's a key, major point.
And I think also, obviously, if you follow the money, there's no money anymore. If you don't have an intermediary, there's no reason to pay anybody, is there? You know, or to have a master that you've got to give money to, or to have a priest that you've got to pay, or whatever else. So suddenly, this is what I mean by the death of religion. I wonder whether all of these corporations now are going to find it hard to survive. Becky, do you want to jump in? Have you thought about this yourself?
You know, I followed several teachers. I've learned from a lot of different people, but I never gave myself away to them in the sense of seeing that they were all powerful and I was just you know, needing their help to be myself, or to connect to God, or to connect to all that is, the divine, the whatever you want to call it. I never felt like I had to give myself away like that. And so I've always felt the connection inside. I've always felt that, and I've never, I've paid for workshops and books and, you know, other things, and I'm certainly willing to learn from other people, but it's very much like what Gary said, it's peer-to-peer. It's not you're better or worse than me, and sometimes I'm the student and sometimes I'm the teacher. Sometimes we're just learning together. Sometimes we're both teachers and sometimes we're both students, you know, and so it's really, I think a lot of what happens is that, you know, we come together, whoever we are, and we sit in the same energy together. And when it's kind of like the Beatles, you know, if you look at the Beatles, you know, we've got John, Paul, Ringo, and George, and four very separate human beings, and separately they do their own thing. You know, they had their own experience, they did their own music or whatever, but the true magic of what happened with them was when they got together and they sat in the same energy, and from that connectedness, from that bondedness, that's where magic happened. That's where things exploded. And so sometimes I think when we sit with other people, like what we're doing today, but also like in the group that we're in, but if we're just sitting with somebody who has some knowledge or who has some experience or whatever that we're wanting, then we sit with them. We can almost like glean from that on that energetic level, and it can inform us. It can help us, but it's not a sense of we need them to help us. It's more like we connect with that kind of energy, and so we allow it in ourselves. And so we open that door for ourselves, and that's kind of what I feel like is happening with you know, just this whole teacher-student thing. Is that, you know, it's really about opening it up ourselves and choosing it by choosing to be with people who help you open it up. You know, who allow that with you. Just like the Beatles, they hung out together and all their doors opened up and all this wonderful stuff came out. And so it's like what's happening here with us. You know, we're allowing ourselves to hang out with each other, learn from each other, grow from each other, and just, you know, become more of who we are. And I think that's kind of the way things are going to go, or are going. At least for me. I can't speak for anybody else. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that have no clue about what non-duality is, or even have the question in their mind or in their heart. They're just plugging away in their little lives like you know, and it never even occurs to them that there's a different way. And so what is their experience, and what direction are they going to go in? You know, that's another subject altogether. But for those of us who are seekers, and those of us who want to know, and those of us who have the yearning to know ourselves to the greatest extent that we can, I think it's the non-duality route for us. I don't think that there's really any other way anymore. But that's just.
I love it, Becky. And you're speaking of the flattening of the hierarchies and merging of energies, and perhaps it's a good segue for us to go into our other topic, which was psychic powers and are they real? And I bring this up because I've been watching an illusionist, I guess, a magician. He was a lawyer and he turned into a magician, hypnotist, and a bit of an illusionist, and his name is Darren Brown. And he's the best psychic I've seen, but he isn't a psychic, he's a magician, and he reckons psychics basically are full of shit. And the problem is every time anybody does any kind of scientific test with psychics, they seem to get hammered. So Danyavada, I wanted to ask you, you and Becky are our resident psychics in this panel today, and Danyavada, I wanted to ask you, what's your experience? Are psychic powers real?
Well, from my point of view, yeah, because I've experienced them myself from a very young age. So scientific instruments can't measure it. It seems, no, it's one of those things that scientific instruments can't measure. But yeah, I've often had a sense of knowing about various different things that I couldn't possibly know otherwise. Very hard. I don't know how to explain it myself, even. But yeah, I have experienced it.
Can you share? I mean, can you share some of these experiences with us? I mean, basically, this guy works with body language. He works with facial changes. He works with writing styles, and he makes these extremely accurate readings that he says has nothing to do with, so-called psychic powers. So, what do you give us a kind of overview of some of these experiences that you've had, which would make you say, look, this is something that's going on far beyond just, somebody reading my body language or my facial changes or whatever else.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, one experience happened when I was quite young, probably about 6 or 7 years old, on a trip back from Auckland to Whangarei, which is in New Zealand. And I just got the very definite feeling that a cat in the family, a dear cat in the family, had died at that moment. And we got home about half an hour later, and there was a cat missing out of 4. There was one missing. And there was a phone call. My brother had stayed in town. He lived in a different house, stayed in town. And so he called, and my father answered the phone, and it was a private conversation between the two of them. I couldn't hear it, but it was a call from my brother to tell my dad that my cat had passed away. And Dad got off the phone, and he was going to try and keep it secret from me, and I just said to him, Dad, my cat's passed away, hasn't it? But I knew half an hour earlier in the car on the way home.
I think it's an amazing experience, and I know I haven't had an experience like that, but I've had feelings like that. Becky, do you want to help us out? You're also a well-established and professional psychic, it seems, at some point. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what your experience is?
Well, my experience is that when I grew up, I thought I was crazy. Because I was constantly, without knowing what was happening, I was constantly buffered with all this energy. I mean, life was really intense for me as a kid because I didn't know that I was feeling everybody's feelings. I mean, I was up and down and around with every emotion you can imagine because of the people around me, because some of them were happy or sad or whatever. And so that was just me being sort of an open sponge, so to speak, just really letting it all in. And so it wasn't until I actually started training, not to become a professional psychic, but really I was just led to this workshop. I didn't even know what the workshop was, and it turned out to be a workshop on developing your psychic abilities. And in this workshop, I was shocked. I was shocked and amazed at the things that I could know and the things that I could do. It was just, it was the most eye-opening experience of my life, I think, at the time anyway. I've had several since, but it was truly amazing. Like, I didn't know I was psychic, which is really kind of funny if you think about it. But it's so one experience I had while I was training is you're supposed to pair up with different people, and this is actually a pretty amazing training experience. We had like 300 people in the group, and so we each paired up, and there was a series of questions that we had to ask each other. And then we got the information from it, and so one of the questions, inane questions, like what kind of car do you drive, or what's your favorite meal, or things like that, things that you just don't know about these people. Well, so I was sitting with this guy, and the question, what car do you drive, and so I got, and at the time, this was in the 90s, I got a late model, like a Buick, green in color, 4-door sedan, and I also saw him get into the car and adjust the seat, adjust the mirror, put on his seatbelt, and then I saw the way he pulled out. He pulled out backwards, and he went to this side, and then he drove out this way, and I saw all that. And so I told him, that's what I see. And so his mouth just dropped open, because not only did I completely accurately describe his car, but he also said, my wife was the last one to drive the car, and so I had to adjust the seat and adjust the mirror and before I could drive. And so that was just one experience out of, I don't know how many I had in that one training situation when I first started, and it was just a shock to me that I could even know that, because it doesn't come in like, ta-da, here's this message, woo-hoo, it doesn't have any bells and whistles. It comes in just like a thought comes in, and how I know this and why I know this and how all this happens, I don't really have a clue. I know I've been doing it for years, but I don't really have a clue about all that stuff. All I know is that for some reason, somehow, it just works. That's all I can say. It just works somehow.
That's great, Becky. Swadine, are you a psychic as well?
No, listen, I'm following this rapidly, because this is a whole area that's beyond my ken. And so I'm very interested in it. And whenever Becky talks about psychic experiences, I'm riveted. In my own experience, no, that's just not, I don't have a whole lot of psychic stuff in my background at all. So I don't have too much to
all right, well, look, I wonder if we should wrap it up with I don't know, we're getting close to half an hour, and we want it to be short and sharp. Is there anything you guys want to say in wrapping today up about any of the topics that we've talked about? Gary, do you want to start?
Well, no, I didn't quite hear what you just said, but I did want to say one thing, and that is getting back to non-duality, which is like more my thing. We have to remember one thing. This is the general principle. Non-duality is just a word. There is no such thing as non-duality. And we have to be very careful. On our group on Facebook, there's a lot of talk about how we communicate and what's being communicated. And I think it's important to remember, at least in this context, that we're using words, and words reify things. But in reality, there's just the open expanse. There are no things per se. There are appearances, but in other words, we make something a thing by calling it something. So we make non-duality a thing, but it's not a thing. Enlightenment is not a thing. You know, God is not a thing. In other words, the more we jog our brain, or at least talking about myself, out of this whole thingness, I think the more we and I can open up just to the reality as it is, without having to label anything. Anyway, that's my
It's the label, isn't it? It's the labels, Gary. I mean, actually, coming back to Wikipedia, one of the Buddhist definitions of it was when you realize that the nature of your mind and the universe are non-dual, you are enlightened. And the Course in Miracles also said that basically everything is God and that nothing else exists. And it seems to me that's the sort of thing you're saying, right?
And speaking of Course in Miracles, I did the Course years ago, and the Course, I remember somebody saying, it's the Advaita for the West. In other words, it's in Western terms, but it's not. It's non-duality. You know, classic. So I love the Course in Miracles, and I love the whole non-dual thing. And yeah, I think you summed it up pretty nicely.
Becky, is there anything you'd like to say to finish up?
Yeah, you know, I just all of this stuff, non-duality, psychic, whatever, it's really just, it's all about the energetic connection, the one thing, or the one non-thing that we all are together, you know, and so the thing for me is that it's so important to remember that we are one, that we are connected, and that we are a part of each other. It's like one of us is one finger, and one of us is a toe, and one of us is an ear. I mean, it's just, we're all together in the same body, so to speak. And so, you know, for me, it just requires an intention on my part, because this is so important to me, to remember that when I talk to somebody, or when I relate to somebody, that I remember that they are me. And I am them. And in that connection and in that understanding, you know, it's not like I want to constantly be stabbing myself with needles or be stubbing my toe against, you know, a brick or something. You know, I do my best to take care, you know, to take care of myself and to take care of the part of me that is them. And so, you know, as we talk with each other and as we relate to each other, you know, it just feels so important that you know, we are all together in this. We are all God. We are all one thing, or so let's take care. Let's take care of ourselves. Let's be kind to ourselves and the selves that look and appear as though they are other, you know. And so I guess that's the thing for me is regardless of what happens and the way we relate, let's try to remember that the vehicle of relation is love. Yeah.
Thanks, Becky. Dhanyavada, did you want to say something to finish up with?
Yeah. I was actually just reflecting on what led me to this non-duality kind of direction that I'm heading in these days, and it came from the need for acceptance, and I just think that's a really important thing for people, especially people who are seekers, to get a hold of, because, you know, in the spirituality world, it's very easy to start chasing, you know, I'm trying to be better at this, trying to be better at this, trying to be a certain way, trying to be happy all the time. And it very quickly leads to being quite inauthentic if you're not careful. And also, once you start trying to perfect yourself, it can go on and on and on endlessly. When in reality, you are what you are. You know, and there's just the need to accept who you are here and now. And to me, that's, in a way, that's what non-duality is about. It's truly accepting who you are, and then in that process, truly accepting what life is as it is. and that comes down to being an expression of love as well, isn't it? You know, true acceptance is also true love. Once you can do it for yourself a little bit, then you can do it for everyone.
That's great. That's great. Thanks a lot, guys. I just want to say, invoking the Becky aspect, that I love you all, and that I'm really happy that we had the opportunity to chat today, and I hope we can do it more often, and we can show people that it's fun, and we get some other people come along and we can record these things and enjoy ourselves. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Ivana. Thanks, Becky.
Everybody, it was great.
Hope we can do it again.
It's fun. It's great.
Thank you. Love you all. Oh, so happy to be here.
So great. So great. Thanks, everybody. We're signing off. Okay, beautiful.